Thief of Time, Part 16. Unity looked at the other two and at the blue glow that still hovered around the group. They had taken cover behind a fruit barrow. "If I may offer a suggestion," she said, "it is that auditors are not good with surprises. The impulse is always to consult, and the assumption is always that there will be a plan." "So," said Susan, "I suggest madness. I suggest you and I and the young man run for the shop, and I will attract the attention of the auditors. I believe this old man should assist me because he will die soon in any case." There was a silence. "Accurate, yet unnecessary," said Lucy. "That was not good etiquette," she said. "It could have been better, however. Is it not written, 'When you have got to go, you've got to go,'" said Lucy. "And also that you should always wear clean underwear, because you'll never know if you'll be knocked down by a cart." "Will it help?" said Unity, looking very puzzled. "That is one of the great mysteries of the way," said Lucy, nodding sagely. "What chocolate do we have left?" "We're down to the nougat now," said Unity, "and I believe nougat is a terrible thing to cover with chocolate, where it can ambush the unsuspecting. Susan?" Susan was peering up the street. "Do you have any chocolate left?" Susan shook her head. "I believe you are carrying the cherry creams." Susan swallowed, then gave a cough, which expressed in remarkably concise way embarrassment and annoyance. "I just had one," she snapped. "I needed the sugar." "I'm sure no one said you did have more than one," said Unity meekly. "We haven't been counting at all," said Lucy. "If you have a handkerchief," said Unity diplomatically, "I could wipe away the chocolate around your mouth, which must have inadvertently gotten there during the last engagement." Susan glared and used the back of her hand. "It's just the sugar," she said. "That's all. It's fuel. And do stop going on about it. Look, we can't just let you die to get—" "Yes, we can," said Lopsang. "Why?" said Susan, shocked. "Because I've seen everything." "Would you like to tell everyone?" said Susan, reverting to classroom sarcasm. "We'd all like to know how this ends. You misunderstand the meaning of everything." Lutze rummaged in his sack of ammunition and produced 2 chocolate eggs and a paper bag. Unity went white at the sight of the bag. "I didn't know we had any of those." "Good, are they? Coffee beans coated in chocolate?" breathed Susan. "They should have been outlawed." The 2 women watched in horror as Lutze put one in his mouth. He gave them a surprised look. "Quite nice. I prefer licorice," he said. "You mean you don't want another one?" said Susan. "No, thank you." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'd quite like licorice, though, if you have any." "Have you had some special monk training?" "Well, not in chocolate combat, no," said Lutze. "But is it not written, 'If you have another one, you won't have appetite for your dinner'?" "You really mean you will not eat a second chocolate coffee bean?" "No, thank you." Susan looked across at Unity, who was trembling. "You do have taste buds, don't you?" she said, but she felt a pressure on her arm pulling her away. "You two get behind that cart over there and run when you get the signal," said Lucy. "Go now." "What signal?" "We will know," said the voice of Lopsang. Lutze watched them hurry away. Then he picked up his broom in one hand and stepped out into the view of a street full of grey people. "Excuse me," he said. "Could I have your attention, please?" "What is he doing?" said Susan, crouching behind the cart. "They're all going toward him," said Lopsang. "Some of them have got weapons." "They'll be the ones giving the orders," said Susan. "Are you sure?" "Yes, they've learned from humans. Auditors aren't used to taking orders. They need persuading. He's telling them about Rule 1, and that means he's got a plan. I think it's working." "Yes." What's he done? "Come on, he'll be fine." Susan leaped up. "Good." "Yes, they cut his head off." Fear, anger, envy. Emotions you bring to life, which is a brief period just before you die. The grey shapes fled in front of the swords, but there were billions of them, and they had their own ways of fighting. Passive, subtle ways. "This is stupid," Pestilence shouted. "They can't even catch a common cold." "No soul to damn, no arse to kick," said War, hacking at grey shreds that rolled away from his blade. "I have a kind of hunger," said Famine. "I just can't find a way to get at it." The horses were reined in. The wall of greyness hovered in the distance and began to close in again. "They are fighting back," said Death. "Can you not feel it?" "I just feel we're too damn stupid," said War. "And where does that feeling come from?" "Are you saying they're affecting our minds?" said Pestilence. "We're horsemen. How can they do that to us?" "We have become too human." Us, human, don't make me lie. Look at the sword in your hand, said Death. Don't you notice anything? It's a sword, sword-shaped. Well, look at the hand. 4 fingers and a thumb. A human hand. Humans gave you that shape, and that is the way in. Listen. Do you not feel small in a big universe? That is what they are singing. It is big and you are small, and around you there is nothing but the cold of space, and you are so very alone. The 3 other horsemen looked unsettled, and nervous actually. That's coming from them? Said War. Yes, it is the fear and hatred that matter has for life, and they are the bearers of that hatred. Then what can we do? Said Pestilence. There's too many of them. Did you think that thought, or did they? Death snapped. They're coming closer again, said War. Then we will do what we can. 4 swords against an army. That'll never work. You thought it might for a few moments ago. Who is talking for you now? Humans have always faced us, and they have not surrendered. Well, yes, said Pestilence, but with us they could always hope for a remission. Or a sudden truce, said War. Or, Fern began, and hesitated and said finally, a shower of fish. He looked at their expressions. That actually happened once, he added defiantly. In order to have a change of fortune at the last minute, you have to take your fortune to the last minute, said Death. We must do what we can. And if that doesn't work, said Pestilence. Death gathered up Binky's reins. The auditors were much closer now. He could make out their individual identical shapes. Remove one, and there was always a dozen more. Then we did what we could, he said, until we could not. On his cloud, the angel, clothed all in white, wrestled with the iron book. What are they talking about? Said Mrs. War. I don't know. I can't hear. And these 2 pages are stuck together, said the angel. It scrabbled ineffectively at them for a moment. This is all because he wouldn't wear his vest, said Mrs. War firmly. It's just the sort of thing She had to stop because the angel had wrenched the halo from its head and was dragging it down the fused edge of the pages with sparks and a sound like a cat clipping down a black board. The pages clanged apart. Right, let's see, it scanned the newly revealed text. Done that, done that. Oh! It stopped and turned a pale face to Mrs. War. Oh boy, it said. We're in trouble now. A comet sprang up from the world below, growing visibly larger as the angel spoke. It flamed across the sky, burning fragments detaching and dropping away, and revealing as it closed with the horsemen a chariot on fire. It was a blue flame. Chaos burned with cold. The figure standing at the chariot wore a full-face helmet dominated by 2 eye holes that looked slightly like the wings of a butterfly and rather more like the eyes of some strange alien creature. The burning horse, barely sweating, trotted to a halt. The other horses, regardless of their riders, moved aside to make room. Oh no, said Fairman, waving a hand in disgust. Not him too! I said what would happen if he came back, didn't I? Remember that time he threw the minstrel out of the hotel window in Sog? Didn't I say? Shut up, said Death. He nodded. Hello, Ronnie. Good to see you. I wondered if you could come. A hand trailing cold steam came up and removed the helmet. Hello, boys, said Chaos pleasantly. Long time no see, said Pestilence. War coughed. Heard you were doing well, he said. Yes, indeed, said Ronnie in a careful tone of voice. There's a real future in the retail milk and milk derivatives business. Death glanced at the auditors. They stopped moving in, but were circling watchfully. Well, the world will always need cheese, said War desperately. Ha ha! Looks like there's some more trouble here, said Ronnie. We can handle, Famine began. We can't, said Death. You can see how it is, Ronnie. Times have changed. Would you care to sit in for this one? Hey, we haven't discussed, Famine began, but stopped when War glared at him. Ronnie Stoke put on his helmet, and Chaos drew his sword. It glinted like the glass clock, looked like the intrusion into the world of something a great deal more complex. Some old man told me you live and learn, he said. Well, I've lived, and now I've learned that the edge of a sword is infinitely long. About to learn how to make a damn good yogurt, although this is not a skill I intend to employ today. Shall we go get him, boys? Far down in the street, a few of the auditors moved forward. What is Rule 1? Said one of them. It does not matter. I am Rule 1. An auditor with a big axe waved them back. Obedience is necessary. The auditors wavered, watching the cleaver. They'd learned about pain. They'd never felt pain before, not in a billion years. Those who had felt it had no desire at all to feel it once again. "Very well," said Mr. White. "Now get back to—" A chocolate egg spun out of nowhere and smashed on the stones. The crowd of auditors rippled forward, but Mr. White slashed the axe through the air a few times. Stand back, he screamed. "You three! Find out who threw that. It came from behind that stall. No one is to touch that brown material." He stooped forward carefully, picked up a large fragment of chocolate, on which could just be made out the shape of a smiling duck and yellow icing. Hand shaking and sweat beading his forehead, he raised it aloft and flourished the cleaver triumphantly. There was a collective sigh from the crowd. "You see," he shouted, "the body can overcome. You see, we can find a way to live. If you are good, there may be brown material. If you disobey, there will be a sharp edge." Ah! He lowered his arms, struggling, as Unity was dragged toward him. "The Pathfinder," he said. "The Renegade." He walked toward the captive. "What will it be?" he said. "The cleaver or the brown material?" "It's called chocolate," snapped Unity. "I do not eat it." "We shall see," said Mr. White. "Your associates seem to prefer the axe." He pointed to the body of Lutze, to the empty patch of cobbles where Lutze had been. A hand tapped him on the shoulder. "Why is it," said a voice by his ear, "that no one ever believes in Rule 1? Above him, the sky began to burn blue. Susan sped up the street to the clock shop. She glanced sideways, and Lopsang was there, running beside her. He looked human, except that not many humans had a blue glow around them. "There will be grey men around the clock," he shouted. "Trying to find what makes it tick." "Yes." "What are you going to do?" "Smash it. That'll destroy history." "So?" He reached out and took her hand. She felt a shock run up her arm. "You won't need to open the door. You won't need to stop. Head straight for the clock," he said. "But don't talk to me. I've got to remember." "Remember what?" "Everything." Mr. White was already raising the axe as he turned around, but he can't trust a body. It thinks for itself. When it is surprised, it does a number of things even before the brain has been informed. The mouth opens, for example. "Ah, good," said Lutze, raising his cupped hand. "Eat this." The door was no more substantial than mist. There were auditors in the workshop, but Susan moved through them like a ghost. The clock glowed, and as she ran toward it, it moved away. The floor unrolled in front of her, dragging her back. The clock accelerated toward some distant event horizon. At the same time, it grew bigger, but became more insubstantial, as if the same amount of clockness was trying to spread itself across more space. Other things were happening. She blinked, but there was no flicker of darkness. "Ah," she said to herself, "so I'm not seeing with my eyes. What else? What's happening to me? My hand looks normal, but does that mean it is? Am I getting smaller or bigger? "Are you always like this?" said the voice of Lopsang. "Like what? I can feel your hand and I can hear your voice. At least I think I can hear it, but maybe it's just in my head. But I can't feel myself running. So analytical." "Well, of course. What am I supposed to be thinking? Oh, my paws and whiskers? Anyway, it's quite straightforward. It's metaphorical. My senses are telling me stories because they can't cope with what's really happening. Don't let go of my hand." "It's all right. I won't let you go." "I meant, don't let go of my hand, because otherwise every part of your body will be compressed into space much, much smaller than an atom." "Oh. And don't try to imagine what this really looks like from the outside. Here comes the clock." Mr. White's mouth closed. His expression of surprise became one of horror, then one of shock, and then one of terribly wonderful bliss. He began to unravel. He came apart like a big and complex jigsaw made of tiny pieces crumpling gently at the extremities, then vanishing into the air. The last piece to evaporate was the lips, and then they, too, were gone. A half-chewed chocolate-coated coffee bean dropped onto the street. Lutze reached down, quickly picked up the axe, and flourished it at the other auditors. They leaned back out of the way, mesmerized by authority. "Who does this belong to now?" he demanded. "Come on, whose is it?" "It's mine. I'm Miss Torpey," shouted a woman in grey. "I'm Mr. Orange, and it belongs to me. No one is even sure that Torpey is a proper colour," screamed Mr. Orange. An auditor in the crowd said rather more thoughtfully, "Is it the case, then, that hierarchy is negotiable?" "Certainly not." Miss Orange was jumping up and down. You have to decide it among yourselves, said Lucy. He tossed the axe into the air. 100 pairs of eyes watched it fall. Miss Orange got there first, but Miss Torpey trod on his fingers. After that, it became very busy and confusing, and to judge from the sounds from within the growing scrum, very painful. Lucy took the arm of the astonished Unity. How quickly they learn, eh? He said, and so do I, I'm pleased to say. Ever heard of Yetis, miss? I was desperate enough to see how much I'd really learned, and they were right. It does sting a bit. There was a scream from somewhere in the mob. Democracy at work, said Lucy happily. He glanced at the sky. The flames above the world were dying out, and he'd wondered who won. There was a bright blue light ahead and a dark red light behind it, and it amazed Susan how she could see both kinds without opening her eyes and turning her head. Eyes open or shut, she couldn't see herself. All that told her that she was something else beside mere point of view was a slight pressure on what she remembered as her fingers, and the sound of someone laughing close to her. A voice said, "The sweeper said everyone has to find a teacher and then find their way." "And," said Susan, "this is my way. This is the way home." And then, with a noise that was unromantically very similar to the kind Jason would make by putting a wooden ruler on the edge of his desk and twanging it, the journey ended. It might not have even begun. The glass clock was in front of her, full size, glittering. There was no blue glow inside. It was just a clock, entirely transparent and ticking. Susan looked down the length of her arm and up his arm to Lopsang. He let go of her hand. "We're here," he said. With the clock?" said Susan. She could feel herself gasping to get her breath back. "This is only part of the clock," said Lopsang. "The other part. The bit outside the universe. Yes, the clock has many dimensions. Do not be afraid." "I don't think I've ever been afraid of anything in my life," said Susan, still gulping air. "Not really afraid. I get angry. I'm getting angry now, in fact. Are you Lopsang or are you Jeremy?" "Yes." Yes, I walked into that. "Are you Lopsang and are you Jeremy?" "Much closer. Yes, I will always remember both of them, but I would prefer you to call me Lopsang. Lopsang has the better memories. I never liked the name Jeremy when I was Jeremy." "You really are both of them." "I am everything about them that was worth being, I hope. They were both very different, and they were both me, born in just an instant apart, and they used their heritage in different ways, and neither of them was very happy by himself. It makes you wonder if there's anything to astrology after all." "Oh, there is," said Susan. "Delusion, wishful thinking, and gullibility." "Don't you ever let go?" "I haven't yet." "Why?" "I suppose because in this world, after everyone panics, there's always got to be someone to tip the wee out of the shoe." The clock ticked, the pendulum swung, but the hands did not move. "Interesting," said Lopsang. "You're not a follower of the way of Miss Cosmopolite, are you?" said Lopsang. "I don't even know what that is," said Susan. "Have you got your breath back now?" "Yes." "Let's turn around then." Personal time moved on again, and a voice behind them said, "Is this yours?" Behind them were glass steps. At the top of the steps was a man dressed like a history monk, shaven-headed, besandaled. The eyes gave away a lot more. A young man who'd been alive for a very long time, Mrs. Ogg had said, and she'd been right. He was holding a struggling death of rats by the scruff of his robe. He's his own," said Susan as Lopsang bowed. "Then please take him away with you. We cannot have him running around in here. Hello, my son." Lopsang walked toward him and they embraced briefly and formally. "Father," said Lopsang, straightening up, "this is Susan. She's been very helpful." "Of course she has," said the monk, smiling at Susan. "She is helpfulness personified." He put the death of rats on the floor and prodded him forward. "Yes, I'm very dependable," said Susan. "And interestingly sarcastic, too," the monk added. "I am Wen. Thank you for joining us, and for helping our son find himself." Susan looked from father to son. The words and the movements were stilted and chilly, but there was a communication going on here that she wasn't party to, and it was happening a lot faster than speech. "Aren't we supposed to be saving the world?" she said. "I don't want to rush anybody, of course." "There is something I must do first," said Lopsang. "I must meet my mother." "Have we got time?" Susan began, and then added, "We have, haven't we? All the time in the world." Oh no, far more time than that, said Wen. Besides, there's always time to save the world. Time appeared. Again, there was the impression that a figure that was in the air, unfocused, was resolving itself into a million specks of matter, which poured together and filled the shape in space, slowly at first, and then someone was there. She was a tall woman, quite young, dark-haired, in a long red and black dress. By the look of her face, Susan thought, she had been weeping, but she was smiling now. Wen took Susan by the arm and gently pulled her aside. "They'll want to talk," he said. "Shall we walk?" The room vanished. Now there was a garden with peacocks and fountains, and a stone seat upholstered with moss. Lawns unrolled toward woodlands that had the manicured look of an estate which had been maintained for hundreds of years, so that nothing grew here that was not wanted or in the wrong place. Long-tailed birds, their plumage like living jewels, flashed from treetop to treetop. Deep in the woods, other birds called out. As Susan watched, a kingfisher alighted on the edge of a fountain. It glanced at her and flew away, its wing beats sounding like the snapping of fans. "Look," said Susan, I understand this sort of thing. Really, I'm not stupid. My grandfather has a garden where everything is black, but Lopsang built the clock. Well, part of him did, so he's saving the world and destroying it all at once. Family trait, said Wen. It is what time does at every instant. He gave Susan the look of a teacher confronted with a keen but slightly stupid pupil. Think like this, he said at last. Think of everything. It's an everyday word, but everything means everything. It's a much bigger word than universe. And everything contains all possible things that can happen at all possible times in all possible worlds. Don't look for complete solutions in any one of them. Sooner or later, everything causes everything else. Are you saying one little world is not important then? Said Susan. Wen waved a hand and 2 glasses of wine appeared on the stone. Everything is as important as everything else, he said. Susan grimaced. You know, that's why I never liked philosophers, she said. They make it all sound grand and simple, and then you step out into a world that's full of complications. I mean, look around. I bet this garden needs regular weeding, and the fountains have to be unblocked, and the peacocks shed feathers and dig up the lawn, and if they don't do that, then this is just fake. No, everything is real, said Wen. At least it is as real as anything else. But this is a perfect moment. He smiled at Susan again. Against one perfect moment, the centuries beat in vain. I prefer more specific philosophy, said Susan. She tried the wine, and it was perfect. Certainly I expected you would. I see you cling to a logic as a limpet clings to a rock in a storm. Let me see. Defend the small spaces, don't run with scissors, and remember that there is often an unexpected chocolate, said Wen. He smiled. I never resist a perfect moment. A breeze made the fountain splash over the sides of their bowls, just for a second. Wen stood up. And now I believe my wife and son have finished their meeting, he said. The garden faded. The stone seed melted like mist as soon as Susan got up, although up until then it has felt as solid as, well, rock. The wine glass vanished from her hand, leaving only a memory of its pressure on her fingers and the taste lingering in her mouth. Lopsang was standing in front of the clock. Time herself was not visible, but the song that wove through the rooms had a different tone now. She is happier, said Lopsang. She is free now. Susan looked around. Wen had vanished along with the garden. There was nothing but the endless glass rooms. Don't you want to talk to your father? She said. Later. There will be plenty of time, said Lopsang. I shall see to it. The way he said it, so carefully dropping the words into place, made her turn. You're going to take over, she said. Your time now? Yes. But you're mostly human. So? Lopsang's smile took after his father. It was the gentle and, to Susan, infuriating smile of a god. What's in all these rooms? She demanded. Do you know? One perfect moment in each one, an oodleplex of oodleplexes. I'm not certain there's such a thing as genuinely perfect moments, said Susan. Can we go home now? Lopsang wrapped the edge of his robe around his fist and smashed it against the glass front panel of the clock. It shattered and dropped to the ground. When we get to the other side, he said, don't stop and don't look back. There will be a lot of flying glass. I'll try to dive behind one of the benches, said Susan. They probably won't be there. Squeak! The death of rats had scurried up the side of the clock and was peering cheerfully over the top. What do we do about that? Said Lopsang. That looks after itself, said Susan. I never worry about it. Lopsang nodded. Take my hand, he said. She reached out. With his free hand, Lopsang grasped the pendulum and stopped the clock. A blue-green hole opened in the world. The return journey was a lot swifter, but when the world existed again, she was falling into water. It was brown, muddy, and stank of dead plants. Susan surfaced, fighting against the drag of her skirts, and trod water while she tried to get her bearings. The sun was nailed to the sky, the air was heavy and humid, and a pair of nostrils was watching her from a few feet away. Susan had been brought up to be practical, and that meant swimming lessons. The Qa'Rajh College for Young Ladies had been very advanced in that respect, and its teachers took the view that a girl who couldn't swim 2 lengths of the pool with her clothes on was not making an effort. To their credit, she'd left knowing 4 swimming strokes and several life-saving techniques, and was entirely at home in the water. She also knew what to do if you were sharing the same stretch of water with a hippopotamus, which was to find another stretch of water. Hippos only look big and cuddly from a distance. Close up, well, then they're just big. Susan summoned up all the inherited powers of deathly voice plus the terrible authority of the schoolroom and yelled, "Go away!" The creature floundered madly in its effort to turn around, and Susan struck out for the shore. It was an onshore shore, the water becoming land in a tangle of sandbanks and sucking black muck, rotted tree roots, and swamp. Insects swirled around it. The cobbles were muddy underfoot, and there was the sound of horsemen in the mist, and ice piled up along against dead trees. And Lopsang taking her arm. "Found you," he said. "You just shattered history," she said. "You broke it." The hippo had come as a shock. She had never realized one mouth could hold so much bad breath, or be so big, or so deep. "I know, I had to. There was no other way. Can you find Lutze? I know death can locate any living thing, and since you—" All right, I know," said Susan darkly. She held out her hand and concentrated. An image of Lutze's extremely heavy lifetimer appeared and gathered weight. "He's only a few 100 yards over there," she said, pointing to a frozen drift. "And I know when he is," said Lopsang. "Only 60,000 years away, so." Lutze, when they found him, was looking calmly up at an enormous mammoth. Under its huge hairy brow, its eyes were squinting with the effort both of seeing him and getting all of 3 of its brain cells lined up so that it could decide whether to trample him or gouge him out of the frost-bound landscape. One brain cell was saying gouge, one was going for trample, but the third had wandered off and was thinking about as much sex as possible. At the far end of its trunk, Lutze was saying, "So, you'd never heard of Rule 1, then?" Lopsang stepped out of the air beside him. "We must go, Sweeper." The appearance of Lopsang did not seem to surprise Lutze at all, although he did seem annoyed at the interruption. "No rush, Wonder Boy," he said. "I've got this perfectly under control." "Where's the lady?" said Susan. "Over by that snowdrift," said Lutze, indicating with his thumb, while still trying to outstare a pair of eyes 5 feet apart. When this turned up, she screamed and twisted her ankle. "Look, you can see, I've made it nervous." Susan waded into the drift and hauled Unity upright. "Come on, we're leaving," she said brusquely. "You get along, then." "I saw his head cut off," Unity babbled, "and then suddenly we're here." "Yes, that's kind of how things happen," said Susan. Unity stared at her wild-eyed. "Life is full of surprises," said Susan, but at the sight of the creature's distress made her hesitate. All right, the thing was one of them. It was merely wearing, well, at least had started out merely wearing a body or as a kind of a coat, but now, after all, you could say that about everyone, couldn't you? Susan had even wondered if the human soul without the anchor of a body would end up eventually as something like an auditor. Which, to be fair, meant that Unity, who was getting more and more firmly wrapped in flesh by the minute, was something like a human. And that was a pretty good definition of Lopsang, and if it came to it, Susan as well. Who knew where humanity began, and, for that matter, where it finished? "Come along," she said. "We've got to stick together, right?"